Parshas Toldos. This is a shiur adapted from the shiurim of Moran Hagoyin Reb Leib Chasman Zecher Tzadik Livracha. This shiur can be found on the website, the Yeshiva Kesed Torah website, yeshivakesedtorah.org, in written form. The title of this shiur is Logic is No Match for Emotions. It says in the pasuk that Esav returned from the field exhausted and famished. Yaakov was in the midst of preparing a bean stew, a cholent. When Esav saw the stew, he immediately and urgently craved to eat it. Yaakov said, "Sell me this day your birthright." Esav agreed and sold the birthright to Yaakov in exchange for a bean stew. This is very difficult. Didn't Esav know the value of the bechorah, of the birthright? Didn't he realize that the bira of the birthright would be the recipient of the brochis for himself and his descendants for all generations to come? Surely he did. He knew the value of the birthright. For Haraya, for when he discovered that Yaakov received the brochis before him, he let out a loud and vayitzak tza'ora gedola umora ad ma'od. He let out a loud and bitter scream. Hence he fully understood and realized the value of the birthright and what he had lost. If so, how could Esav do something so irrational and illogical as to sell the invaluable and precious birthright in exchange for some beans? Perhaps we see from here the blinding nature of taiva, of temptation. Despite knowing the value of the birthright, Esav's craving and yearning for the bean stew blinded his otherwise keen insight and perceptiveness. He directed all his temptations and focused them toward one goal: to obtain and enjoy the luscious bean stew. These emotions overwhelmed and literally steamrolled anything and everything that stood in their path, including his logic. His emotions reigned supreme. All he wanted was that bean stew. His logic and intellect no longer functioned. Thus Esav was able to sell the precious birthright for a worthless bean stew. He was so focused on receiving this temptation, this bean stew, that was the only thing that was in his mind. It steamrolled everything in its path. Going further, we could ask a question on this. True, while he was under the focus of emotions to get that bean stew. But when he finished the bean stew, and he was now satiated, and his mind was functioning normally again, question, why didn't he scream out at that time, Vayitzak Tzora Gedola Umora Ad Ma'od? Well, he said, now he knew what he did. Now he should have screamed. While he was under the trance of emotions, he couldn't, his mind did not function properly. But after he was satiated, now what did he do? What he did was what did he do after he was satiated? He vayivez Esav es habechora. He despised, belittled, and rejected the birthright. As to say, the birthright is nothing anyway. Why did he do that? He could have said he made a mistake. He shouldn't have done it. But instead, what he did do was despise, belittle, and reject the birthright. Vayivez Esav es habechora, as if to say, the birthright is nothing anyway. That's the question. Now that he was normal, why didn't he just say, I did something wrong, and that's it, and live at peace with himself? Perhaps the answer to this question is, after eating and drinking and satisfying himself, a new temptation had now entered upon the scene. The temptation for kavod, for honor. What should Esav really do upon realizing the foolish thing that he did, selling the birthright for a bean stew? Should Esav admit this foolish act? How could he admit? It would be a shameful and embarrassment for him to admit to the gross error that he had committed. His ego would not allow him to do so. His internal self-condemnation would torture him until the end of his days. Esav therefore had to satisfy his conscience by rationalizing and justifying his act. He therefore despised and rejected the birthright, as if to say, the birthright is nothing anyway. He didn't do anything wrong. His mind was now at peace. He had done nothing wrong. These emotions which occurred within the heart and mind of Esav are in reality natural human reactions which readily occur within our very own lives. We may succumb to a bias toward even the most meager physical pleasure, which can distort our ability to see the truth. We then rationalize and justify our act in order to satisfy our ego. May we merit to be aware of these emotions that exist within us. May we be zeicher to discern between the biases and their consequent rationalizations and what is in reality is the truth. May Hashem help us to purify our hearts and serve Him in truth. Amen v'yamen.